Hi, I'm John Barclay and welcome to the Fatality Free Future podcast.
My name is Holly Ferguson. This is the podcast where we explore the challenges and possibilities of creating a fatality-free future. Now, it's no secret that traditional risk assessments, safety observations, and hazard and incident reporting can be the bane of some workers' existence. Many of these methods are riddled with shortcomings that reinforce inefficiency and complacency, and they can be quite frankly disengaging. Our guests today have set out to change that and the way that workers engage with work, risk controls, and they do that all by using the power of voice. Welcome the founders of RiskTalk's, Stuart Farquharson and David Press.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, cheers.
You've both got quite different backgrounds. Stuart, you had a career in mining and heavy construction, while David, you've had your own digital agency. I'd love to hear a bit about your own backgrounds before you formed RiskTalk.
I don't know, I've worked on mine sites, roads, rail, construction, utility works, mostly in the safety space, but a range of different other positions within that. And I guess the reason we started RiskTalk was because the people on the ground came up to us and said, this absolutely sucks. You could just imagine construction workers using a lot more four-letter words than that. And they said, why can't we just talk about it? And we're like, sure, why not? Let's get you talking.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty common. They're pretty frustrated with all the paperwork that they have to go through, and it's not sort of their typical role, is it?
It's also just, it's separate from work. They get in there and then they've got to do the paperwork, and the paperwork doesn't even reflect what they're actually doing in the end anyway. But if they have a conversation, it's actually, well, what are we actually doing? Who's doing it? How are we going to do it? So that's a big part of why we want to encourage that conversation rather than pencil whipping a piece of paper. Sorry, Dave, I interrupted your intro. Should I just keep going?
No, that's fine. I am from tech, digital agency originally. Before that, banking, and before banking, I actually put myself through uni with tech. So it was kind of a return back to what I would shown some skills in pretty young, and then very lucky that Stuart came to me with the idea that he had, and the rest is history really from there.
What was your website called that you had?
The 17-year-old one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as a very young man, I sold fishing tackle, which were jigs specifically. Manufactured from lead, and I named it Jiggy Jigs after some consultation with some friends without knowing what Jiggy Jig meant in many parts of the world, and then had middle-aged men ordering from a teenage boy asking if I'd spent time in certain locations.
Oh, no.
And I had no idea what they were talking about until about 2 years later.
So two different backgrounds.
Yeah.
How did you actually meet? Like you said, when Stuart reached out, what was the context to that?
Sport. Yeah,
Sport.
Stuart and I both played at Melville Cricket Club, which is now Murdoch University, and we just caught up. Stuart was in Sydney, I was in Perth, and we were catching up while he was in town. I think we were in the gym, if I remember correctly, and on the way home.
Show.
Yeah, no, it doesn't show nowadays. But on the way home, Stuart said, "I've got this idea. Would you mind, lending me your ear?" And I'm pretty sure I took about 3 minutes to say, yeah, this is a great idea.
So what was it about that concept that inspired you both to really get going? I mean, I know you just spoke about the workers and things, but I mean, tell us that conversation and what inspired you to change your careers and start RiskTalk and go down this path.
I guess it was mostly around the why we were doing it. I mean, I know there's like AI and everything these days. It's all great. There's all kinds of different technology out there, but the why we do it was by far the most important thing. And we just wanted to make life better for the people on the ground, the guys doing the work or the workers. And if we could make their lives more efficient, more engaging through an intuitive tool, then it's just going to make their life so much better. And I mean, one of their greatest fears actually is being caught not being able to, or not having literacy levels at the levels that you would maybe expect someone in Australia to have, let alone around the world in different languages.
And especially with the diversity we're getting now, with
Absolutely.
English becoming second or third language for people. You see it all the time. They're okay actually talking in English per se, but as soon as you get them to have to read something or write something, you can see them, it's not always the easiest thing to do.
We have an amazing customer over in the States, and in Stunt Construction. Hopefully they'll hear this. One of the gentlemen there wrote a white paper about us because they were really, really impressed at how it was working for them and so on. And one of the challenges they faced was that they had workers who were Spanish speaking listening to pre-starts and toolbox talks and risk assessments in English, not really understanding a lot of it, and then lining up and signing a document that was all in English. So when we turned on the multi-language part of it and allowed them to speak Spanish, converting it back to English for the management team, it changed everything for them. And they had that saying, Stuart, was it? The number one fallacy about communication is that it ever took place. And that was how they really believed that, and they had this huge problem where they had no evidence whatsoever that communication actually took place, but now they do.
For those who haven't heard of the app before, could you give us a brief description of it and tell us how the choice to use voice became part of the app itself?
It's always been voice, because once again, we believe that communication is the number one key factor especially when working in teams. We don't want people just lining and signing things. We want people actually talking about how you're going to be doing things, who's doing what, communicating in the right way. Even if you look at us now, we're making eye contact. Can't do that on a form. Can't do that on a digital form. If you think that digitizing a form is going to help you, then it doesn't change anything. You're just electrifying a problem. So we're all about getting voice in because, there's so many different aspects, even like storytelling we love, because it pulls certain memories out, and it also imprints different aspects of work. And it's also applicable as well. Like, we often hear in Risk Talk, like someone will tell a story, can't do it this way, Jimmy got his finger cut off, like that. And then the next one, they say, oh no, you can't do it this way, Jimmy got his finger cut off. And this guy doesn't even know Jimmy, but he tells the story again. And that's great risk management. That's been going around for forever, right? Since the dawn of time. Don't eat that berry. Someone got sick doing that, and so we don't eat that berry these days. So that's primarily the main reason. But look, it still comes back to just providing a better user experience for people to be able to do their work in a safer manner.
At a safety level, though, we're asking people to do a JHA by communicating and talking in a group and, hey, John, what do you think is, and so on. But then you're asking them to write it out. And the writing out was always the friction. It was never, are you willing to have a chat before you start work? That's never been a problem. But you ask them to document it, and then it becomes a major problem. And so voice was the obvious solution.
Yeah, from my perspective, I spent most of my career in the field coaching teams and especially their leaders, engaging their teams around the risk conversation. You can see those conversations are happening. Some happen a lot better than others, but they're happening. And as you say, they then get to this issue of, well, now I've got to document all of that, and the documents just become more and more bureaucracy for them. There's more, the organisation has this false belief that what's in this document is protecting everyone, and it's this protection process. But half of the stuff on there hasn't even been spoken about. Half the stuff on there isn't even a part of the plan anyway. They've just written it because someone said it should be on there, and someone's added it at some point, and then they've kept adding it. But it hasn't really added any context, really meaningful context, to the actual work.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, you often just see slip, trips and falls and that kind of stuff. It's like, well, what are you actually going to slip on? What are you doing about it? If that's an issue for you, let's do something about it.
And, from my perspective, we spend a lot of time now trying to help organisations emphasise the critical risk management, so the fatality prevention stuff. So how have you started to integrate that? Because, it really did start with just the whole JHA model, talking about the steps of the work, the hazards, the risks, and going through that. How have you now brought in the real critical risk part of that process as well?
So originally the process was very much like, what are we doing? What can hurt and kill us? Your critical risk and critical control part, and more speaking. And we wanted to get away from the ticking and flicking on the controls especially. We now actually have a button that you can press while recording speech that shows the risks and controls you just selected, and then it's asking the workers to provide real context. So our classic example when we talk to people is working at heights, anchor points. So normally people just tick. And what we're saying is, okay, well, which anchor point? Tell us how you're anchoring to it. Tell us which one. It takes 5 seconds to give that response. But now management and the organisation know that there's a real understanding as to what the expectations are for an anchor point or for working at heights. So that's how we manage it on that front line side of it. But then at an observation level, you can do very much the same, or assurance piece, whatever you want to call it, and just talk through the risks and controls about what's being done well and what's not being done well. And then the AI structures all that up into something useful.
And that's a really good example, because I can remember being on a site, they'd had an incident where a person they were working around a primary crusher part, and it was open. The people were all hooked up, so they had their hook up, they had their anchor point, but the anchor point wasn't the normal one, because the normal one was generally above them, which gave them their pendulum correction. But they had to go to the side. So when they actually now moved around, there was extra length in their restraint, and the person fell. Luckily, it was only 2.5 meters, and he didn't get too seriously hurt. A few stitches and stuff, but it could have been a lot worse. But if you just went by the like it was a paper version JHA, they were compliant. It was all good. Like if you had just checked it, if you had done a typical compliance check, everything would have been fine.
Mm-hmm.
But the conversation, the guys actually had the conversation prior to it around their concerns about the anchor point that they couldn't use and the issue they were going to have with the ones that they were going to use. But this was a person that came in after that conversation, signed on the JHA, got to be hooked up, got to follow the anchor point, tick, tick, but hadn't been a part of the conversation around how they were going to manage this extra length.
Yeah, he wasn't contextually aware of it at all.
Correct.
Yeah. I guess that's another thing. What we really wanted to achieve was that JHAs and other forms and stuff are pretty much all done in environments which is easy to write, like a crib room or an office or wherever it is. It's like that is not at all conducive to a good risk assessment. You want people out there looking around, pointing at stuff. The philosophy of Shisakanko, the point and call, the Japanese philosophy has a huge impact as well. And we do see that happen naturally when people use RiskTalk, because they're not trying to fill out words on a form, but they'll go and they'll point out the anchor points. Well, which ones should we use, guys? Or we've got to use these ones and this one because we're not going to swing across. And then if someone else comes on, they can have a listen to what actually just everyone spoke about, which is important, because people emphasise different points. And
if they're unsure, they've heard the conversation. If they're still sort of unsure because they didn't see the pointing and all that, they go ask, right?
Yeah.
But if you just read something, you assume so much in what you're reading versus what you're hearing.
Absolutely.
Can you help us understand a little bit about how the managers are involved in this process? What are the managers seeing on their end?
I mean, there's a workflow. So if someone talks into it and it needs to be signed off, depending on how you configure the system, it'll go through to a supervisor or manager. It could be based on the risk level or the critical risk that's involved. In the US, they often call it sticky, which is shit that can kill you. And that gets reported through the boards and stuff. So there is a workflow of approvals. However, the one I like the best in there is a feedback feature. So anyone in the organisation can provide feedback on it. And we love it the higher up it gets. So if you've got like head of a huge mining organisation leaving feedback for a boilermaker on the ground, it just has a huge impact. And then they go, oh, this person just left me feedback. Then they show their mates, the quality of the conversations get better. And it also shows a really good level of engagement between people in the field and office workers.
And to me, that changed because a lot of the conversations I have with leaders around, effective recognition and feedback is when it's about what they've written, it's not about them as a person. It's almost like about the compliance that you're following. But when you listen to a conversation, you give feedback about the quality and how good they did at talking about something and highlighting something and getting a really good process to it. That means a lot more than just saying, look, I really appreciate the JHA you wrote the other day. It was really good quality. It almost means nothing to people, because to them, the paperwork's not about, I know it is, but for them, it's actually not about them. But the conversation is about them. So that recognition is amplified so much more.
Just around the AI side of it, which is relatively new at a management level, we now have the ability to perform quantitative analysis automatically with AI on quality. It can be almost any metric you want, including gap analysis, comparing JHA to an SWI or something similar. But what that does for a manager on observation data or assurance data or incident data, which both make up very, very, very small percentages of work. We can now type into chatbots and say, what are the top 10 controls we've inadequately discussed or unaware of or poorly represented across the last 30 days of work. So then you're able to then perform training or allocate resources to areas where you've identified really big gaps, but you haven't had to wait for the incident to find that, which is game-changing if you think about that from a safety level or a safety point of view. It's been a huge uptake in this. It's a relatively new feature.
Yeah, and I think from my experience where I've been on sites who have been using RiskTalk, I think it has changed the way I can coach a leader, because a leader, traditionally would go read the risk assessment and then go ask a couple of questions to check understanding and then sort of go. But now they can listen to the conversation. They get real-time information or reflection on the conversations that have been happening. And now they can actually go and reinforce the conversation, not just a tick and flick that was written by one person or those sorts of things. So even from a manager's point of view, you know, in the past, all a manager could do was read a document, go have a look at what was written and signed off, and a lot of assumptions come under that. But now even if you're the CEO, being able to listen to what your teams are actually doing is game changing.
Even not having to ask for the JHA.
That's a big thing.
You know, like the guys are rolling their eyes as they're giving it to the manager. You know, like don't even have to do that anymore.
It's an audit instantly. As soon as you go, pass me a JHA, and that's the first thing people always ask for is like, pass me a risk assessment. Yeah. But if you don't have to ask that at all and just go straight into a conversation with someone, already knowing all the context around everything, it's enormous. It's
correct. And it's the number one thing I coach on. First thing I say is, I don't want you to ask about the JHA. How are you going to start this conversation? What are you curious about? What do you want to go talk about? Well, I know they're doing this work, so I want to understand the working at heights. I want to understand the hot works. I want to understand this. Right, so you don't need the JHA. So just go ask questions, have a great conversation about those three things, and away you go. Well, now they've heard that conversation, and now I'm just curious around how they got to that idea and why they chose that control and, you know, why that was going to work and what were the challenges with it. So now they've even heard the thinking process out loud, and that changes your coaching curiosity straight away. And I think it's just one of the most powerful ways to do that. I always think it's amazing. Being
contextually aware before you start that conversation is fundamentally completely different.
Yeah, and they think they're getting that from the JHA, but they're not. You know, they think they are, but they're not, you know, because it's just, like I say, it's been written. And if you think way back when JHAs were first sort of rolled out as that mechanism, it was about the conversation. People are talking about this risk. We need some evidence of that conversation. So just write down what you talked about, right? And then it just got more and more bureaucracy behind it and more compliance focused on it, where now it's become, like I say, written in a crib room or written in an office, and sometimes even typed in a computer and printed off. That's a lot as well, and it's lost its intent. You know, where this brings it back to what's the intent? Have a chat as a team, talk about your plan, and make sure you're all on the same page.
It's funny you mentioned that, like talk as a team and a plan. One of our very good customers, global company, they're looking less at the context these days of what people are talking about and looking more at the dynamics. So they want our AI coach to look in it and go, right, well, are you asking open questions? Are people actively engaged in it, or is it just one person saying this is how we're going to do it? And it's amazing seeing the different results, especially from different cultures around the world as well. So you might have a more like hierarchical culture, which is like, this is how we're going to do it, but then they don't get an understanding if their workers know exactly what's going to be happening, especially if there's different languages amongst them as well. And then you've got other cultures where it's very open. Like Australia is fairly open. I mean, we started Risk Talk because the workers on the ground pretty much went to myself and one of the managing directors and used a whole bunch of four-letter words, which would never happen in other cultures. Here it's really good because people can actually interact with each other. And we can get, as part of the AI coach, we can get quality scores on the dynamics of that conversation, not just context.
From the day I first started talking to you, which was probably 5 years ago, 5-6 years ago, I reckon, you have made leaps and bounds as you go. So just talk me through some of the, you know, how you get that feedback and how you get those learnings and what's made you, you know, what's given you the insights you needed to keep evolving it.
I mean, early on, obviously natural language processing was the core of everything we did from the very start. So from an AI point of view, those have been much, much more recently. So taking much bigger steps back, it's always just been remarkably small things in the user experience space mostly. So everything down to I know this sounds ridiculously simple, but button sizes, getting things like that right, removing voice to text from the UX or the UI. So having voice to text showing in a user interface was an absolute game changer for the product. It's much like subtitles on a movie screen. You can't help but watch them and read them, and you're not actually listening anymore. It's the same, and you're looking for the words you're saying, and it just ruined the conversations, and everyone started looking at the screen. You're just back to that form, heads down and no one really communicating. So that was a major one. I remember that vividly. And then along the way, just approval flows. Feedback was a massive step forward again. That came from a a local council saying that our workers never hear, or the workers saying they never get feedback after putting in the effort of writing up a hazard report and dropping it in a box back in the office, a pain in the ass fundamentally. And they said, we don't even hear anything about it. So we built this feedback loop, and then it turned into something much bigger than that and became more about well done on the way you spoke to your team and you spoke about these and that positive reinforcement. So those two strike me as the two biggest ones. I don't know about your view, Stu.
Yeah, I mean, that hazard or the feedback thing, it's like you could imagine a worker has to go and put the effort in to fill out a hazard form and put it in, and then the next week they come past and that hazard's still sitting there and they're like, have no idea what's going on. But a supervisor or a manager can jump on there and go, thanks for leaving that. We've got the Sparky coming. He's coming in 2 weeks. So let's just mark off the area and it'll be sorted as soon as we can.
Yeah, that's a common one, right? Is you identify the hazard, you put a barricade tape up or an out of service tag, or you put something up to keep people away from it, and it's there for 2 weeks. Yeah. And everyone's going, well, they don't care, But like I say, well, the electrician's been booked and they're coming in 2 weeks, So if we know that, people go, get it. Yeah. I get it.
And I'll fill out another one then.
Yeah, correct.
One of the main things is that our intent of what Risk Talk is hasn't changed. So everything still needs to be more engaging, more efficient, and more intuitive for the workers. And that's been since day dot. And companies are actually coming to us now because they're our principles. And it's all for the workers on the ground. We push back on big companies that go, oh, we need this extra checklist in there. It's just like, no, your 40,000 workers need to go through a whole extra step every single time they use it to create some prettier graph for managers. It's like, no, that's not what we're about. So that intent of what we first set out to do is still there. It's just that as technology gets better, we can have better reporting, we can find more gaps in it, our analytics get a lot better, and I guess the easier to up-manage things is a lot better, but we still want people to have the right conversation at the right time.
Yeah. I mean, for our listeners who are listening and thinking about, is this of interest to me and would I want to have a go look at it, what are some common things to think about, challenges that they're going to face to try and roll out some new technology that's, it's different and it's a big, to me, I call it, it is a disruptor technology. It's disrupting the standard process, and that's why I find it really exciting. But what are some of the common hurdles, barriers to get this up and running?
The first is getting engagement, like any good change management. Like you need to get senior management engagement, get engagement from the workers on the ground. Does it benefit both of you? If it does, great, we can move on to the next step. And the next step is having a bit of a digital strategy. Like, you don't all of a sudden want to have this app and then you're not allowed to use devices out in the field. It's just like, well, where do we go from here? Even though it does work offline, having a signal is always beneficial because you can get the live feedback and all that kind of stuff. So having that kind of strategy behind it is always important. But otherwise, generally, there's such a want from the workers on the ground to not have to write out JHAs or fill out other forms or shift handovers or whatever it is, that they'll pick it up and run with it like really quickly. And as I said, we're not just digitising a form, which is an important part. So as soon as we run in that direction and we've got engagement from both sides, we've got a bit of a digital strategy, then it's all systems go, and it can be done very, very quickly. So
from a tech side, Dave, is that generally pretty easy once you get through that planning stage?
I mean, cybersecurity is not a topic we want to start on. I mean,
Mark touched on it, and I don't want to go there.
The 200 questionnaires and so on, they're brutal, but that's part of business and enterprise especially. That's just, you have to deal with that. Yeah, I would say from a tech side, it's really quite simple. Everybody wants to integrate. Ironically, almost no one has a JHA module to integrate with. Nobody is capturing them digitally. So we're pretty lucky there that that's relatively seamless for us. These days, it's data visualization is a really big one that people need to have a strategy for, because invariably you collect all this data and then the management says, well, what are we doing with it? And you have to be ready to show them something, So that's probably the other hurdle, I would say. Stuart nailed it though. The two he mentioned are the two big ones.
Yeah. I know early on when we got into these conversations and I started, because I do a lot of work with organisations around culture change and building the trust in organisations, because there's always some scepticism from the workforce around why organisations are doing things. I was really quite surprised at what you all experienced at the early stages. You said the workforce were really hungry for it. So how did you experience the potential or the assumption of mistrust between the workforce and the organisation or leaders, and did that create any hindrance in rolling out processes?
I would say a company that talks to us, especially the early days, probably already have a relatively good culture because they came to us. They've obviously identified a problem and said, hey, we want to be better. Let's find something. So invariably, we didn't actually have those issues anywhere near as much as you would expect. It's probably harder now than it was back then. But when I say harder now, we're still talking once every now and then it comes up. It's very rare that workers say, I don't trust my employer to do this or so on. You are just talking about the same things you were already talking about, and they can see the text after it's done. They know that there's nothing extra in there. The fear is it's like 1%, maybe less.
You do get the 1 to 2 people that are like, no, I've got some cryptocurrencies on my phone and you're going to hack into me and and I've got my bomb shelter at home.
Yeah.
But look, and in all honesty, they're the loudest ones as well. So they sound like it's half the population that are like this, but it's actually like 1%. So it's very rare.
Because any social change construct always has your laggards, right? So you're always going to have, and that's why I try and educate leaders on, is they're going to be the loudest.
Yeah.
Like they're going to be the most vocal. Your early adopters and your early fence sitters are the ones that are going to quietly adopt it and embrace it and work their way through it. So
we didn't do video early and still haven't released that because of trust. Things have changed. So the journey has been no one will trust voice, like at a corporate level. You can't do that with voice was the classic. And then we started seeing more people running around with Alexa and Siri and so on, and then people became comfortable with it. And that was the first hurdle we got past that. And I don't mean frontline, I'm talking corporate level here. But frontline video, absolutely not. But TikTok is now the biggest, and Instagram are the 2 biggest platforms, and we're wondering now just how much longer it'll be till everyone's comfortable with video.
Yeah. People would step out of the way of the video and not want to be part of it. So the user experience wasn't there.
How else is the app evolving, or anything else you could maybe give us a preview on what you're thinking of doing next?
We've already got it a fair bit, but one of the latest ones is like a shift handover, only because it's a legislative requirement and it's a frustration for supervisors and managers. So they're like, if we can just talk into it, this will make my life so much easier. And also from a comms piece, just leaving voice notes throughout the day that can be picked up by the other supervisor. They get a very good understanding of how that day turned out and what panned out and everything like that. We do have quite a few other features coming in. One that's becoming more prevalent is also, I guess it's like an emotional analysis, which can pick up voice biomarkers. It's been in there for a while, but the issue is that companies don't know what to do with it. So once you've got the data, how do you manage it? So it's generally your larger organisations that are going, right, well, we're picking up these 6,000 odds, so different voice biomarkers. It's telling us like the confidence levels or the dominance levels of different workers, or whether they're happy, angry, sad, anything like that. Now what do we do with it? So the larger organisations tend to love it because they want the data so they can act on it. Smaller organisations are like, how do we act on it? And if you're looking for trends in psychosocial hazards, have we changed supervisors and now everyone's emotional status has dropped off, or have we increased swings and now this is the case, or we've got rid of the midweek barbecues and what impact is that having? Or have we implemented something really good and has that had an effect on our workers? So we've got a very unobtrusive data set on that, which is quite powerful. What else do we have coming?
The agentic AI side of it's very big. Yeah, the ability to compare what your expectations are versus the reality, all automatically with great qualitative output. Qualitative, quantitative, but fundamentally it's human assurance level, but automated. It's really cool.
Wow. So I think AI is probably keeping you pretty excited around the things you're trying to do.
Yeah. It's an interesting one. We've been AI first, cloud native AI from day one. So a long time now. But now boards are pushing safety teams to embrace AI, and we're just sitting in the box seat, very, very happy with that outcome. But it's exciting.
The thing with AI, though, is like you still need good data sets. If you grabbed everyone's JHA from a company and put that in an AI system, or Gemini or wherever you want to chat GPT and ask it to spit us out some trends.
Done it. It doesn't do it.
It doesn't do anything, right? It's just like, it's not a good data set.
No.
Number one risk was slips.
Yeah. Well, we're chatting with the guy the
Number
other
one
day.
control was PPE.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We're chatting with the guy the other day from a huge organisation. They had to like take fives every day, even in the office. And so for the whole organisation, the number one risk was cable across the ground. I'm like, good. That's going to be very helpful for everyone because there's nothing else in an office, yet you're making them take five. So,
But we even do that from what should be a reasonably good data set, which is incident data. You know, when people have put all their incident data report in, and I know when we first spoke, I was working with another organisation that was using natural language processing and machine learning and stuff then too, and we just couldn't get it to what it could do because everyone's data was just so poor. Because that was running off text data, which you sort of do, but you're doing it from voice, like you're doing it from a recording point of view, which means whatever text you're getting is much richer anyway. Because it's spoken, not typed. Because I don't know about you, I've got 1,000 words in my head, but when I type it, I write out 10. Yeah. Because I just summarise it.
Right.
So, so your data becomes very ineffective.
and imagine just having like every activity that everyone's doing, and everyone's talking about it, and that's, I mean, people talk about like your field leaderships and stuff being the number one lead indicator and observations or whatever it is. But imagine if you had the risk assessment that leads the task for every activity as your primary lead indicator. It's like, well, what are we doing here that's well? What are we missing?
And just imagine when the two line up. Like you've got great evidence of the risk planning process and great evidence of the verification process, so the observation, the check process, and getting to the point where you can actually compare the two and have we actually looked at the same things and looked at and verified the things that we should be. So
Well, then you whack the incident data on top of that, and then that's when you can start becoming a bit more predictive about when things could occur.
Stuart and David, thank you so much for coming in today and joining us on the Fatality Free Future podcast. For those who are interested in following along with Risk Talk and yourselves, where can they find you?
RiskTalk.com.au for our website, but LinkedIn's always a great option. Find Stuart or I and strike up a little chat.
Pop next door. Our offices are just next door here, so
on St George's Terrace.
St George's Terrace. Always happy to meet with people face to face. All the best technology in the world, but face to face is always the best.
Certainly is.
All right, we'll find you on St George's Terrace then. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Well,
Cheers.
thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fatality Free Future podcast. Head to our Fatality Free Future hub on barclays.com for more information and to access everything we spoke about in this episode.